how will Trump impact the financial market and what should you do with your money? Well, so far he launched a cryptocurrency that turned people into millionaires overnight. Dow Jones rose 433 points, plus 1%, S&P 500 gained 0.6%, Nasdaq Composite edged up 0.3%, Bitcoin hit a new record surpassing $109,000, and the dollar is strengthened against other currencies due to expectations of more aggressive economic policies. But how will this impact the USA and the world? And most importantly, how could it affect your wallet? Before diving in, don't forget, like and subscribe to this channel. First, what happened in the inauguration and what can happen next? Actually, Trump kicked off his presidency with a speech and an oath of office using two Bibles. One was Abraham Lincoln's, first used back in 1861. The other was a personal gift from his mom in 1955. And now Trump is officially the 47th President of the United States of America, taking over after Biden, a president who sparked plenty of controversy. On one day, Trump wasted no time and signed a series of executive orders. Here are the key ones. Pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Agreement, the global pact from 2015 to combat climate change, signed an order to restore freedom of speech and crack down on censorship, declared a national emergency at the U.S.-Mexico border. Oh, and he suspended 78 executive actions from Biden's time in office. During his inauguration speech, Trump brought up his plan for the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. Yeah, just like the meme coin, and put Elon Musk in charge of it. He also spoke about rebuilding trust with the American people, promising once again to make America great again. And here's a big one. He said that he's determined to turn the US back into an industrial leader. To do that, he's ditching what he called green policies, including rules that favor electric cars. His approach: go all in on oil and gas, with the catchphrase, drill baby drill. Of course, he said a lot more, but it's too much to cover everything if I was to say everything here. And let's not forget the high-profile guests who showed up. Among them were the three richest men in the world: Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg, plus Google's CEO Sundar Pichai, and a bunch of other big names from the American market. Everyone must have seen the news. But it's worth noting that recently the world of social media and communication has been quite shaken. Zuckerberg reversed several decisions he had made based on the principles of the woke narrative and announced that Meta would no longer penalize political posts. TikTok went down for a day. Then it came back online and Musk made a purchase offer. It's crazy. The next events in this regard are somewhat unpredictable. But this market continues to be influenced significantly by Trump. Also, changing the subject, Jake and Logan Paul took a selfie with the OpenAI CEO Paul Altman. I swear. Now, talking about BRICS, Xi Jinping was invited but declined, and Putin wasn't invited at all. Still, Putin congratulated Trump on his inauguration and made his stance clear. Russia is ready to discuss the war in Ukraine. He emphasized that while the previous US administration cut ties, he's open to respectful dialogue. What we do know is that his team is already preparing for a call with Putin, aiming for an in-person meeting to address the war directly. What's striking is Trump's willingness to talk face-to-face with Putin, something Biden hasn't done in nearly 3 years. European diplomats are watching closely, suggesting Trump's strategy could shift the dynamics of the conflict. But indications are that Trump isn't planning to abandon Ukraine altogether. The Kremlin remains cautious, waiting for concrete actions in the early months of Trump's presidency, as this could set the tone for the entire conflict. And meanwhile, Zelensky has warned that if the US cuts funding for the war effort, the consequences could be devastating for Ukraine. And why does this matter to you? Well, because experts argue that the war war in Ukraine has been one of the biggest drivers of global inflation in recent years. And here's how. The war disrupted supply chains, and sanctions on Russia caused prices for essentials like wheat, oil, and fertilizers to skyrocket. In the US, inflation peaked at 9.1% in June 2022, with fuel prices soaring by 42%. Food costs jumped 10.4% by the end of 2022, and housing expenses surged as well. This war has hit wallets worldwide, and any move toward resolution under Trump's leadership could ease these economic pressures. In his inauguration speech, Trump also stated that he wants to measure America's success by the wars it ends or prevents, positioning himself as a peacemaker and unifier. It's an ambitious goal, but if he can deliver, it could be a game changer for the global economy and stability. And now, there's one more polemic of that day. Appears to make back-to-back faces salutes at inauguration rally. Musk put his right hand on his chest before extending it straight out with his palm facing down and his fingers touching. A gesture widely recognized as the Roman salute, adopted by the fascist movement a century ago. Some people argued that he just wanted to thank the crowd. That's what I believe in, actually. But what do you think? Tell me in the comments. And second, how does Trump influence the crypto market? Let's not spend too much on this. You've probably already seen the headlines, but we can't ignore it completely. Trump has gone all in on crypto, so much so that people are calling him the crypto president. By the end of 2024, he reportedly held $5.4 million in crypto, with Ether being his largest position. That number has probably changed by now, but here's what's interesting. This info comes from Arcan Intel, a blockchain analysis firm that tracked his digital wallet by analyzing asset flows and matching them with public data. Trump didn't just talk about crypto during his campaign, he made it a core part of his platform. Here's what he's promising. He wants to make the US a global hub for crypto innovation. He's committed to protecting self-custody rights for digital assets. He's against launching a US CBDC, and most buzzworthy, he's talking about creating a strategic Bitcoin reserve for the United States. This last point has the crypto community fired up. If Trump decides to take the 200,000 plus Bitcoins already held by the US government and use them as a part of a strategic reserve, that would already be a huge step. But imagine if he starts buying even more Bitcoin to grow that reserve. It could spark a global race as countries scramble to secure their share of this finite asset. And the impact? It could completely reshape Bitcoin's value. And let's be honest, no one knows where prices could go from there. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Yesterday, Trump launched his own cryptocurrency. It's called Trump. He announced it on X, and it's already causing a lot of buzz. At launch, the coin started at $9, skyrocketed to $74, and then dropped it to $37, all in under 12 hours. Now, some people are already calling it a pyramid scheme 2.0, and it's not hard to see why. The coin has been incredibly volatile, and here's the kicker, it doesn't seem to have any real foundation. If you're investing in crypto, always ask yourself, what's the fundamental value here? It's just like investing in stocks. You wouldn't buy shares in a company that doesn't produce anything or offer any real service. The way Trump was introduced raised a lot of questions about its utility and whether it has any long-term sustainability. And honestly, projects like this often seem designed to create hype, attract investors, and cash in, without any real value behind them. That's why they look and feel like pyramid schemes. And like any pyramid, it's great for the people who got in early. But what happens next? Well, let's dive into the third part of this video. Third, what's going to happen to the financial markets? Let me start by saying I don't have a crystal ball. Everything I'm sharing here is based on market predictions and the data we have so far. That said, things can change overnight. For example, what if Trump steps down due to health issues mid-year? That's totally unpredictable and it could flip the economy economy upside down. First off, is Bitcoin guaranteed to skyrocket after Trump's inauguration? Some say it will take off. Others argue it might actually drop because the hype is already priced in. What does that even mean? Well, here's the thing. Crypto investors are super optimistic right now. But if Trump's plans hit roadblocks, and let's face it, they will, that's how life works, that optimism could fade and some people might start dumping their Bitcoin. It's totally normal. So here's my takeaway. Bitcoin follows a pretty clear post-halving cycle. Let me break it down. There's an accumulation phase about 1 to 2 years before the halving. Bitcoin's prices stabilizes. This is when savvy investors start buying, and then the bull market, because when the halving happens, the reward for mining gets cut in half, creating upward pressure. This kicks off a massive price surge, so we call it a classic bull market. And after this, there's an exuberance phase. Prices peak, euphoria kicks in, and everyone wants a piece of the action, and finishing the correction and bear market. After hitting the top, the market corrects itself, prices drop, and we enter a bear market. This can last 6 months to a year. This cycle repeats every halving. And the last one, well, it was April 20, 2024. So it's no surprise Bitcoin's hitting new highs right now. But now moving to the US stock market, there's a chart floating around showing that the S&P 500 historically performs better under Democratic presidents, and Trump is Republican. So does that mean if Kamala Harris had been elected, the S&P would have exploded, and with Trump it's doomed? Well, not at all. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Markets are influenced by so many factors: policies, global events, investor sentiment. It's never that simple. What we can do is stay informed, watch the trends, and adapt as the market moves. Because predicting the future isn't possible, but being prepared, that's always in our control. And okay, but you might have seen the news. In 2024, interest rates rose, and these increases were necessary to control inflation, driven by strong consumer spending, wage growth of 4.5%, and high government spending, which pushed prices. Many economists, including members of the Federal Open Market Committee, are optimistic about a soft landing for the US economy. This would mean slowing GDP growth without dipping into a recession. However, the path ahead is razor thin, and any misstep in Fed policy would have significant consequences. If the Federal Reserve cut interest rates too quickly, inflation could surge back, derailing economic stability. On the other hand, if it holds off on rate cuts for too long, it risks pushing the economy into a recession. This makes the next several months critical for the Fed as it carefully balances the dual goals of managing inflation and supporting economic growth. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the decisions made now will shape the trajectory of the US economy for years to come. And also, bringing this information to financial markets, I want to end a myth, because you might have heard that rising interest rates are bad for stocks, but that's only partly true. It's bad when rates go up a lot, like over 3%. Last year, US 10-year bond yields went up 0.6%, and about 0.5% of that was due to inflation-adjusted rates. While that might sound like a big jump, it's still far from the level that usually hurts stocks. In the past 2 years, stocks grew more than 20% each year, something we hadn't seen since the early 1990s. Even though inflation and rates were higher last year, stocks ended the year strong. That momentum could continue. Big companies, especially in tech, are likely to keep leading. Why? Well, because they have huge cash reserves. So companies like Apple and Microsoft have over $100 billion in cash. Due to low debt, they aren't hurt much by rising rates. And to present a more critical perspective, let's look at the other side of the market analysis, because everything I've said so far is pretty positive. Howard Marks, billionaire investor who predicted the dot-com bubble, doesn't see Nvidia or the tech-dominated US market as a bubble now, but he warns that things are looking frothy and expensive. And while Marks acknowledges the quality of companies like Nvidia, he stresses that history shows not all dominant firms stay on top. Only one company from the top 20 in 2000, called called Microsoft remains there today. The challenge lies in whether these companies can maintain growth and avoid being overtaken by competitors. I want you to look at the market as it is now and reflect that probably in a few years, the companies that are booming and in the hype may not be there anymore. This is what has happened throughout history. Only a few solid business models last for centuries. Adding another layer of caution, Warren Buffett's recent moves highlight concerns beyond just high market valuations. Berkshire Hathaway is sitting on a record $325 billion in cash pile after selling significant stakes in companies like Apple and Bank of America. And this could mean many things. I'm just telling you because I want you to understand that not even the market giants are taking huge risks. Everything still seems very uncertain, so everyone is thinking carefully. Fourth, that said, how you should invest your money. The first thing is don't buy and sell your ETFs or stocks all the time. Why? Because you should always invest. Do you remember that fact I mentioned about the S&P 500 performing a little worse during Republican administrations? BlackRock did some incredible math. If you had invested $1,000 in the S&P 500 back in 1953, here's how it would have turned out. If you only invested during Republican administrations, you'd have about $31,000 today. If you only invested during Democratic administrations, it would be around $50,000. But if you just left it invested the entire time, regardless of who was in office, you'd have $1 million. It's crazy, right? And here's another interesting piece of data. Who do you think would perform better in the market? A person who invests regularly every single month, or someone who can magically predict the future and only invests when the market hits rock bottom? A study revealed that even if you had a crystal ball and could time the market perfectly every single time, the person investing regularly every month would still come out ahead. Why? Because timing the market and the power of compound interest are far more important than trying to time the market. The study showed that dollar cost averaging outperformed by the dip in 70% of cases over the last 40 years. So stop wasting time trying to predict the perfect moment, cousin. Sometimes the best strategy is to stay invested and let the market work for you over time. I'll show you with another math comparing two people. Anna stays fully invested, letting her money grow without interruptions. At the end of 30 years, she has about $745K. Lucas, however, panics during market drops and stays out of the market for just 5 of those 30 years. By missing out on compound growth during those years, he ends up with only $590K. Even investing the same amount, Lucas loses $155K simply by stepping away from the market. The difference, Anna let compound interest do the work, while Lucas lost out by taking his growth each year. This shows why staying invested is key. The second thing I'd like to point out is this. If you are seriously concerned about the financial market, you shouldn't commit yourself financially to large expenses. Don't buy a house, don't buy a new car, and don't compromise your salary if you depend on it to survive and are worried about unemployment. Because anything can shake you. A big crash doesn't have to happen. You could simply be unemployed for 5 months and end up in debt. Looking back over the past century, the average gap between major financial crises is 7 to 10 years. So you will likely face a crisis during your lifetime. Be prepared and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Bye-bye.